Hi, Ms. Nundorf. I hope you're having a fun and healthy coronation. I was assigned the Bush v. Gore case, and this case was argued on December 11th, 2000, and decided on December 12th, 2000. During the election of 2000, the votes between Al Gore and George Bush were very close, and people began to question whether or not these votes should be recounted. So Florida State allowed Al Gore to choose 4 counties in which these 4 counties would manually hand recount all of the votes from the presidential election. They had a 7-day window from November 7th to November 14th, and they claimed that this was not enough time. So Al Gore took the situation to the Florida State Supreme Court, requesting a time extension in order to finish manually recounting votes. Florida State gave him the okay to go ahead and finish up recounting votes by November 26th. However, George Bush filed a lawsuit in the United States Supreme Court stating that this was a violation of Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2 of the United States Constitution, and it was also a violation of the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution. The plaintiff here is George Bush, and the defendant is Al Gore. However, ultimately, the actions in question are the actions of the Florida State Supreme Court. The Supreme Court decided in a 7-2 vote that the actions of the Florida State Supreme Court were indeed unconstitutional. The Equal Protection Clause ensures voters that their votes won't be devalued by arbitrary political schemes. The idea of recounting votes was indeed constitutional, but the practice and the way in which it was done was not. The actions of the Florida State Supreme Court were also deemed unconstitutional because the court made a new election law, and this is only to be done by Florida legislation. Florida State Supreme Court was using judicial activism. Judicial activism is the idea that the courts should step up and take a more active role in solving societal issues. This is what the Florida State Supreme Court tried to do. They tried to step up and help Al Gore by giving him leeway from the laws already put in place by Florida legislation. Ginsburg and Stevens are on the side of judicial activism by stating that any recount of any sort is considered constitutional. However, the Supreme Court stepped up and struck down the attempt at judicial activism by siding with the idea of judicial restraint. Restraint is the idea that the courts should stick to their traditional roles given to them by the Constitution. The idea that the courts should only interpret the law rather than trying to apply it to how society changes today. The Florida State Supreme Court tried to alter the election laws already put in place, and the Supreme Court deemed this unconstitutional because it's not the court's job to change or create new legislation. Breyer and Souter, 2 men that had heard the case hearing, agreed that a recount was unfair, but the manner in which this was done was not. For my resources, I used a YouTube video titled How the Supreme Court Decided the 2000 Election and oyays.org.